What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the End in Mind podcast. Quick reminder that this is actually part 2 of a series which came out last week. So if you have not tuned in to that first part of this conversation, I highly suggest going back, listening to that, and then coming back to this part 2. We are having some really thought-provoking gray area conversations in these episodes, so I cannot wait to get all of your thoughts. Yeah, let's dive into this part 2 with Abby and Lisa. Cannot wait to share with you all. Hello, and welcome to the End in Mind podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin, the owner of Meraki Media Management. The End in Mind is a place where we come to share stories, tips, and strategies of many entrepreneurs, creatives, business owners, and just some people that aren't willing to live the traditional lifestyle. We talk about how to live outside of the box today and how to incorporate what really is important in your life to keep that end goal always in mind. Again, if you would like to reach out to me in any type of way, you can find me on Instagram at Meraki_media_management. And I hope to hear from you all soon. Thanks so much and enjoy our show. The other piece of this that I really loved of how you both are able to communicate with one another is how people should be able to talk to their coach. Like if their coach pitches them an $11,000 and they're like, well, I can't afford that. Why is it that the coach then is like, oh, well, I'm looking for, different types of clients? Why can't we start to ask ourselves, exactly how Lisa is saying too, as well, what can we offer? What could we work with them on? And how can we talk through that limiting belief? Because sometimes I get on the phone with clients and, something that would seem reasonable, they don't believe it is, So there's so many levels to the pricing aspect of this as well, where it could just be a money belief, which we all have and we're born with. But why can't we just talk about it on the sales call? Like that's what would make a great coach, or a great therapist, whatever you may be looking for and pricing out about. So I think that that's kind of the shift that Abby's describing as well within society. So that people can start to have these conversations with strangers. It doesn't have to be a heated moment, it can just hold the space and say like, hey, no worries. If this doesn't feel good, let's come back later. How can I help you in another way? How can I make another connection for you or offer a lower price point? Because we can help so many people. And if we have the knowledge, who are we to withhold it,
Well, and I think that's what, correct me if I'm wrong, Abby, I think that's kind of what you were describing earlier when you were, talking about that, of if you know yourself and what you have to offer, then that conversation's really easy, for the coach to be able to hold that space, because you're like, here's what I can offer. What are you looking for? What are you needing? And then holding that space for them to really explore that. And it's like, me personally, I say things like, okay, well, maybe we'll do one session to start, or we can do Voxer support, or we can do like, I'm very like, let's do this and this, because I do know what I can offer. And so it's clear for me to be able to kind of assess where that person is and say, here's some support. We've got all these options. What feels good to you? But I think, that's because I've done a lot of work, not only on myself, but I've been in this field for a long time. Abby does it so well too, because personally, what I've seen over the years is Abby's really gotten to a place where, you can hold that space of just listening, and you're really good at that. And I think that comes from, well, obviously doing your own work, but really recognizing what your purpose is and knowing what you want. What do I hear? I'm not what you want, but here's what I have to offer.
Yeah, like that piece of, I think what we're talking about, just to put it super simply, is like, this is a match or this is not a match.
Yeah.
And if you rush through that, or if you are trying to people please / fawn your way through, you don't have the experience of feeling the match or knowing what to do if it's not a match. Like that is, I talk about like body wisdom so often, and people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, it's just the most unfamiliar thing. Whereas for me, it's like, I've been in training to tune into body wisdom. And so at this point now, this feels like a match or this doesn't feel like a match. But I will say it took a lot of experimenting and trial and error. And, I've been working through this personal development and transformation, like self-transformation for, almost a decade now. And there were a lot of things that I purchased that I was not tuning into. Is this a match from body wisdom? It was just it was a head. And it was like, what is hooking me to say yes without feeling the resonance, the coherence of whatever the thing was? Like a lot of things were like that. Right. And so, just thinking about one of the tools recently that I've started employing is actually listing out, like, what are the things that I'm looking for in trainings or in offerings, so that when things come up, I can do a check against that little list. And that has helped me kind of tune into that body part, because it starts with my mind, but then I can go, okay, here's this check. Wow, this is like this wasn't even on my radar, but now that it's on my radar, I'm like, ooh, look at this shiny object. Yeah. That's one element, right? And then if it was on my radar, then I can feel into, oh, this feels like the correct course or the correct coach or the correct opportunity, whatever that might be. And knowing that all of us feel that differently, like my inner body wisdom isn't going to feel the same as yours, but we all have it. And I think it's learning to tune in to access what's already there. And it's also learning out of or coming out of, the bypassing, oh, well, my brain is thinking this. So even though I'm having this unsettled feeling or this like flutter or this sour or like whatever the feeling is, I'm just going to forge ahead. I'm just going to go for it. Right. Because that's the messaging that we're taught from day one, is like, just do it. Just do the thing. And that's where the conversation of energetics and like our own individual energetics becomes really yummy. Because if you start knowing and understanding, like, oh, I'm picking up an energy here of, and this goes for providing and for like consuming, of like, I want to be able to fit into this. I want to be able to say yes, right? Even if it's not correct for me, is one of those energetics that plays in. So yeah, it's just such a like, we can like go deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
Abby, I think you're right, as far as that, you can play that into pricing as well. Yeah. It's not just even the program. It's that, and that goes, as you're saying that, I was thinking about a time where there was a program where I was like, ooh, I really want to work with this person. But then I saw the price and I'm like, sat with it for a long time. And then it was like, if I purchase this, I would actually have more anxiety about it, because then where am I going to feed my kids, or where am I going to do this, or where am I going to, and that to me was like, this isn't the time, so to be able to really sit with it and listen to that inner wisdom, and then really kind of like, I recognize like, oh, that's going to make me more anxious. Like, I'm going to actually not get anything out of this program because the whole time I'm worrying about X, Y, and Z. And I think that plays into what we were talking about in the beginning.
Yeah.
About, someone who's telling you, like, here's the thing, like, if you're having a conversation with the coach and the coach is like, well, you can just do payment plans. Okay, but $500 payment plans isn't always good for people, or whatever, or $1,000 payment plans, or a month for the next 12 months, or whatever it is. But really checking in with yourself, like you're saying, Abby, going back into, that checking your inner wisdom. But then I think that goes into what you were talking about with, like, we really got to know ourselves. And
Yeah.
we've really got to do that personal growth work, that inner work, to get to the point of where, and like Abby said, that, she's been on this journey, like a lot of people, but for like a decade.
Yeah.
This isn't like an overnight success thing. This isn't like it's a lot of trial and error, like she said. And I think people need to recognize that too, is that learning how to slow down and listening to your body, not your mind, and really slowing down, because we are such a quick fix society, a hurry up and get to the end of the race kind of thing. And we're going to hang out on the hamster wheel as long as we need to.
Yeah.
And it's just not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's almost, yeah, when you were saying that too, I was thinking, it's like if I were going to offer wisdom coming from my own journey, I think like the first thing is unhook from the urgency. Because if you can do that first, whether you are pricing something, or whether you're like out there, like in the marketplace, like, is this for me? Is this not for me? Unhooking yourself from the urgency that's just this current that's like sweeping us along, right? Buy, purchase, more. That very first step is what offers space to hear yourself.
Yeah.
If you're in the urgency of everyone else, it's imposed. I think that's what puts the earmuffs on, where you're like, I can't even, like, what are you talking about? I can't hear myself.
Yeah.
What wisdom?
Yeah, exactly. And just to add in, like, from a marketing standpoint, that's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to not listen, to tune out, give the cash, operate in scarcity. And I just had a theory that I wanted to share with you both and our audience. As society is shifting and there's so many entrepreneurs and there's so much training and so much knowledge, this old way of selling is still so present. We never wanted this old way of selling, but that's what we were taught as salespeople in society, that this is how you do it. And now that we've all learned it, we're now evolving and asking ourselves, how do we want to be sold to? And I know when I would push people in the past, coming from a very masculine standpoint, it didn't feel good for me and I lost the sale. And then I quickly realized, if I just tell them I'm here whenever you need me, they always come back around and our relationship is even better. They're sending me referrals. It's such a laid back way of selling and it feels good. And I think that that's what people need to hear. Like, if you are being coached by someone where you spent a lot of money and you feel like you have to use these tactics, ask yourself, what would feel good? How could you sell that would feel good to you? What price point would feel good? Like, these questions aren't really asked in these trainings because it's always push, exactly how we're saying with society. It's all mimicked within these small nuggets of conversation. So yeah, that was just one thing that I was kind of thinking about as we were going through this. Like, we've all been given the knowledge now. So now we have the power to make our own decision.
And I think it comes back to trust. Like, what comes up when you're saying that is trust yourself. In order to trust yourself, you have to, really do the work to get in alignment, to know, because that example I gave you with the coach I wanted to work with, I sat with it, right? And at the time it wasn't right. Well, it turns out she lowered the price for a session and, a month or two later, and I was like, oh, perfect. And then I get to have that. And then I ended up like I was able to have what I needed because I waited. And I trusted that it was going to come when I needed it. And therefore my relationship with her was not coming from a urgency or a scarcity or any of that. It was organically there. And you can apply it to buying a car. Think about buying a car. I cannot stand when I walk in and I got a sleazy salesperson. I'm out. I don't even care if I like the car. I'm out.
Yeah.
We were buying our car in January. We went in and we were looking at a specific car. And that's how it felt. And my husband and I were like, no. And we literally kept saying, no. All we need you to do is tell us what this will look like. And they wouldn't do it. They kept trying to sell and sell and sell. And we're like, no. So we like left. And we walked down the street to another one, and we walked into the place where we bought our car, and it was like Zen. They were like, hey, how's it going? How's your day? They didn't even like try to sell us anything. Like they just let it be. And we ended up buying the car. I mean, and if you think about that anywhere in our lives of how we're marketed, like food, anything, we're marketed with it being shoved down, noise, 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 noise. And if we slow down, trust ourselves, learn how to trust ourselves, slow down and listen to that inner wisdom that Abby was talking about, we can make much more educated decisions for ourselves.
Yeah. And knowing, like, even the knowledge of this is the industry standard, like this is how we've been taught, right? And you're like, okay, well, I was taught that way, but that doesn't mean it's the only way. As a business owner, as a service provider, well, does it feel correct to me? Am I just disregarding how I want to play? Like, just because it's the rule book, I guess, just because it's the rule book doesn't mean that it's the only way to play. And like, that's how innovation happens, right? I was reading Liz Gilbert's book, what's it called? Big Magic. And there was this line that was like, imitation has to happen before innovation. And it just struck me so much. And I think it's part of what's happening right now in this industry is there was a lot of imitation. And part of the purpose of imitation is that there are people who will feel into this imitation doesn't feel correct to me. And so I'm going to try it a different way, which then allows other people to see, oh, there's a different way. I'm going to imitate that way. How does that feel? Oh, that's closer to what feels good, what feels aligned for me. Right. And so there is this piece of like, we're working on our own in this, but we're also learning so much from each other. And so the awareness of like, even just knowing like there are people out there who are working business in a different way helps you to slow down and look for that. Look for what does it feel like? What does it feel like in that car sales place when you walked in? Like, ooh, this is different, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could feel the energy, the difference of the energy in there if you slowed down. Like we could have very easily stayed in the first place because that was one of the cars we were thinking about buying. And we'd been talking about it, we wanted it, and we could have just pushed ourselves through it. But both my husband and I are like, this doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
We don't like this. And therefore, I'm not giving you my business.
Yeah. And that's the simplest question to start with.
Yeah.
How does this feel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do I want to stay here or do I want to turn around and run the other way? And like that whole line of, well, like just face the fear and do it anyway. Like I am just not a subscriber to that belief. I think that fear is there to give us messages. And sometimes it is because we're pushing out of our comfort zone and like we need a little nudge and there's a voice there. But a lot of times it's like your body telling you, no, please hit eject or like do a U-turn and go the other way. And it's okay to hear yourself in that. Yeah.
I think you bring up a good point, and that goes to what you were saying, Caitlin, with rhetoric. Yeah. We are, and not just in the coaching world, but in general, there's this idea of, if you're fear, push through it. Stop and take a moment. Like, what's the fear? Like, is the fear because it's like, this doesn't feel good, unsafe, versus, oh, that's out of my comfort zone. And maybe like, I'm just like, like, check in. Because, and there's a lot of, I can't think of other ones off the top of my head, maybe you guys can, but there's a lot of other words like that where we are told of what it's supposed to, like, oh, just do this because, you just got to bypass that. When it's like, no, there's a reason. First of all, fear is actually what our bodies and our system are supposed to do naturally. We are mammals, therefore, just like a mammal, what's an animal do when they're afraid? Fight, flight, or freeze, right? So that's what our fear, like, we are designed to have fear in our bodies. So we have to really check in. And are we, pushing ourselves into something that's just not good?
Yeah.
Just because we're told to jump in, push through it.
Yeah. And I think that that's what happens when you do just push through, right? They invest, someone might invest, myself included, and then resentment comes up. And then you start to not trust yourself on every little decision that you're making in your life. And I know this because I just experienced this recently. So this happens on so many levels, and you just can't beat yourself up. You just have to take it as another lesson. And for any of our listeners that may be, navigating a situation like this, or maybe overspend on, shoes, like this can be investing in so many things. And another key piece that I just wanted to add into what you both are saying is that I believe we all believe money is energy. You're just giving them energy. And I know the coaches that I've invested in where I would have not traded a penny back for some of the words that they gave me. It was priceless to me. I would go back and I would pay them tenfold, for what they've been able to help me do. And that's what you want when you invest with a coach. And it has to feel aligned. It has to feel good. And what feels good for your best friend in business might not feel good for you. And I love that you both have brought up such of those different polar, dynamic views, because what may work for Lisa in coaching may look different for Abby in coaching, even though they've known each other since they were young. And that's the beauty of this, is we can all, network and get to know how each other is selling, as Abby mentioned, and then take bits and pieces from that. Maybe you don't even need coaching right now. You just need to sit back and observe.
That's a really good point. And yeah, just honoring that. And really what you're saying, Caitlin, is honoring where you're at.
Yeah.
And knowing, that's the thing too, is like knowing it's okay. The way Abby and I approach life can be very different. And that's okay. It's that we both respect each other. We both honor each other. We value each other. And we can have these conversations where we can kind of poke at, like, literally, Abby's the person I call when I'm like, oh, I kind of need someone to poke at this a little bit, because I know she'll be honest with me. And I know she's not just going to feed me the stuff that I, like, oh, okay, everything's great. That she's going to be like, well, what about this? Or have you thought about this? Or, and kind of poke at the things to get me to really take a look in deeper inside to evolve better. And that's the conversations I think we need to be having as a whole, as a society, and being able to hold those places. We do not have to agree with everything. We're all different people. We do need to respect each other and hold spaces for each other in that way. And people can argue with me on that, and that's okay too. We need to evolve as human beings and get to the place that Abby was talking about earlier, in that utopia world that will get to when people listen to this like 2 years later and like, oh yeah, she saw that in the future. I know she. So yeah, I just think we need to hold those spaces for each other and have those conversations.
I couldn't agree more. Abby, do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, I don't think I do. This has been like really yummy. I mean, well, hold on. I do have one last thought, which is it's making me think just some more about like kind of what we started with that inverse relationship, back to just that topic of pricing, of like, what does it feel like as a service provider in thinking about your own pricing is one flip side of it. And then what does it feel like as the customer in terms of pricing as the other side? And I feel like we got deep into the, what does it feel like as the customer? And I think the same kinds of, theories, ideas can apply if you're questioning pricing as a provider. It's like, what does it feel like for you to put that price on your work or on your service? Does it feel like you're doing it because it's what has been taught to you, like do it this way? Or does it feel like it's in resonance? So I think that's like a ...
Yeah.
Real quick, that's the other piece I was talking about with rhetoric. I think that's the other piece of, well, then you don't have self-worth.
Yeah.
Which I think is a load of crap, because if you are in alignment with yourself, it feels good to price something at like $77, whatever. I'm just throwing numbers out there, like, and other people are like, oh, well, you could sell that for like 1,000, but the 1,000 doesn't feel good. That does not mean you don't have self-worth.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the rhetoric we're hearing in the coaching world is you need to price yourself in your self-worth, but that's going to look different for everybody. So just because someone's program is $599 versus, $2,000 or whatever, that doesn't mean that their self-worth is less.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for people to hear that and recognize that.
I completely agree. I actually just had a very similar situation occur at a networking call with a woman. She was amazing. And she made a comment to me about my pricing. And I realized that I will no longer allow my business to be my identity. So when she gives me advice, I don't take it personal. But before, it would have been totally my self-worth. I'm not looking at myself enough. I'm not giving myself enough credit. And now I look at my business as a vehicle and an evolution process for me and my clients. So if this is what I'm pricing now, that's what works. But when I change it in a few months, that's good too. And I think the fluidity isn't explained enough either, Lisa, as you added. I think that was a great, key piece for everybody to remember on both receiving ends. Like if you can't afford it, it's also not your self-worth. Like money is just a construct, and you deserve amazing service no matter what you can afford, what you can't afford, So I think that that's the other challenge of society and the world at hand. This is how our world's been structured. And as we've all talked about many times before, and I'm sure our listeners would resonate, things are changing. And thank goodness for it, because we all deserve to be happy because we're alive, period.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for coming on. Can you tell us how our listeners can get in touch with you or follow you both on social media, or where they may be able to learn more about you both before we hop off here?
Instagram is Tuthill Lisa. So there's the 3 L's in the middle. Website is www.lisatuthillcoaching.com. And obviously they can get a hold of Caitlin if they need to get a hold of me and they can't find me. So those are the 2 best ways, 3, I guess, to get a hold of me.
And mine is primarily still on Instagram. It's my name, Abby Arrizon. I think you have show notes or something. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. We'll have it all linked below just in case you guys are audio trying to search. I figured I would just let you both explain or share, but absolutely. We'll have everything linked below for you all. Get in touch, reach out to us. Even if you just have thoughts on this topic, we're very open to different views and we're happy to discuss and, just get to know everybody better. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next time. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much for listening to The End in Mind. I would like to remind you all, if you haven't yet reached out to me on Instagram, we are at Meraki_media_management. It will be in our show notes as well. If you would like to reach out to me, we always offer free coaching through Instagram based around our Instagram training and our business Instagram practices. If you need any type of support, please do not hesitate to reach out to me there. And we also offer several different types of consulting and training packages if you're looking for a little bit more in-depth tips. So thank you all for listening in. And of course, I want you all to keep the end in mind as you continue with your day and or work week. Have a great week, and I will see you all next time.